What if myths were more than just old stories? What if they were mirrors of the soul, ancient truths wrapped in symbols, dreams, and timeless archetypes? Welcome to the Soul of Myth, where we explore the deeper meaning behind the legends we thought we knew. From heroic quests to cosmic battles, every myth holds a key to who we are and why we're here. In this video, we'll journey beyond the surface of storytelling into the heart of human experience. Because myths don't just entertain, they awaken. This is more than history. It's soul memory. Let's begin the journey within. Myths. The word often conjures images of dusty, old books, legendary creatures, and half-remembered tales told by ancient peoples. For many, myths are dismissed as fictional, primitive attempts to explain what science now reveals. But to see myth merely as outdated or imaginary is to miss its deeper essence. Myths are not lies. They are metaphors, symbols, mirrors. They speak to something beyond fact. They speak to meaning. And meaning, unlike information, lives not just in the mind, but in the soul. In this way, myth is not merely a form of storytelling. It is a form of soul speaking. It speaks in the language of image, archetype, and emotion. It tells us who we are, where we come from, and what we are capable of becoming. To understand the soul of myth, we must go beyond the question, did it happen, and ask instead, what does it reveal? Myth as a map of the inner world. While science maps the external universe, myth maps the internal one. In every culture, myths serve as guides for the journey of life, not in the literal sense of geographic directions, but in the symbolic sense of inner orientation. Myths are the soul's compass, especially in times of uncertainty, crisis, or transformation. Take the archetype of the hero's journey, described by mythologist Joseph Campbell, found in countless stories across time, from Gilgamesh to King Arthur, from Buddha to Luke Skywalker. It's a narrative pattern that begins with a call to adventure, leads through trials and descent, and ends with return and renewal. The hero's journey is not just a tale about a person going on a quest. It is a reflection of our own psychological growth, leaving comfort, facing fear, discovering inner power, and returning transformed. It is your story, told through mythic symbols. The language of symbols. The soul does not speak in prose. It does not explain. It images. Just as dreams are filled with strange symbols, snakes, doors, oceans, so are myths. In fact, myths are often called the public dreams of a culture. Where dreams are individual and unconscious, myths are collective and remembered. Consider the image of the dragon. Found across the world in both Eastern and Western mythology, the dragon represents the thing we most fear but must face. In the West, dragons hoard gold and guard caves, symbolic of the inner treasure hidden behind danger. In the East, dragons often represent power and spiritual wisdom, showing that fear, when integrated, becomes energy. A dragon is not just a creature. It is a metaphor for the soul's trials and rewards. Symbols are how the soul communicates truths that logic cannot contain. Myths are the great library of those symbols. Creation myths, the origin of meaning. Every culture has a creation myth, not just to explain how the world began, but to express why it exists and what role we play in it. In the Babylonian Enuma Elish, the world is born from chaos after a cosmic battle between gods. In the Genesis narrative, creation arises from the Word, a divine utterance of order into the void. In many African traditions, creation is the unfolding of breath, rhythm, or sound. These stories differ in form but align in function. They reveal the sacredness of existence. To say that these myths are false because they differ scientifically misses the point. They are not scientific blueprints. They are spiritual blueprints. They tell us what the universe means, not how it physically operates. And this is essential, because the soul is not nourished by data. It is nourished by purpose, death, rebirth, and transformation. If creation myths speak to the beginning, death and rebirth myths speak to transformation, the core of all human experience. The Egyptian myth of Osiris, torn apart and resurrected by Isis, is not just about gods. It is a story about cycles. Death leading to new life, darkness giving way to light. The Greek myth of Persephone, taken into the underworld and returning each spring, mirrors not only the seasons, but the emotional truth of grief and renewal. In shamanic traditions, initiates often undergo symbolic death before they are reborn into new awareness. This pattern is echoed in Christian baptism, Islamic surrender. Islam means submission, and Buddhist enlightenment, the dying of the ego to reveal a deeper self. These myths show us that suffering is not the end. It is the threshold. Through myth, the soul learns how to endure, to let go, and to rise. The sacred feminine and the lost balance. Modern myth tends to elevate the hero, often male, often conquering. But the soul of myth is more than conquest. It is balance. And one aspect often forgotten or suppressed in patriarchal cultures is the sacred feminine. In ancient mythologies, from the great mother of Neolithic Europe to goddesses like Ishtar, Inanna, Isis, and Shakti, the feminine was not merely passive or nurturing. She was also fierce, wise, creative, and transformative. She held the mystery of life and death. When myth loses the feminine, it loses its balance. It becomes a tale of domination rather than integration. But when myth honors both the masculine and feminine, it reflects the wholeness of the soul. Today, the re-emergence of goddess stories and feminine archetypes reflects a deep yearning to restore what has been forgotten. The power of receptivity, intuition, compassion, and cyclical wisdom. Myth in the modern age, a crisis of meaning. We live in an age of speed, data, and disconnection. Information is everywhere, but meaning is scarce. The soul, overwhelmed by noise, grows quiet and hungry. This is where myth returns, not as a relic of the past, but as a remedy for the present. The soul of myth offers what modern life often forgets: depth in a shallow culture, wisdom in an age of information, imagination in a world obsessed with productivity. Modern myths still emerge in superhero stories, in sci-fi epics, in fantasy tales. These are not escapes from reality. They are expressions of reality at the soul level. Why does the world respond so deeply to stories like The Matrix, Harry Potter, or Black Panther? Because they are new myths wrapped in modern robes. They speak of identity, transformation, resistance, and belonging. They ignite the same soul flame as the myths of old. The mythic self, living the story. You are not outside of myth. You are a myth in motion. The moment you ask, "Who am I? Why am I here? What is my path?" you enter the mythic realm. You begin your own journey, your call, your trials, your transformations. Carl Jung believed that every individual contains archetypes, universal figures such as the hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the trickster. These are not characters out there. They are inner patterns that shape how we live. When you face your fears, you battle your dragon. When you follow your calling, you answer the hero's journey. When you fall into despair and rise again, you live the myth of rebirth. You don't need to believe in myths. You live them, whether you know it or not. The key is becoming conscious, becoming the storyteller of your own soul. Reclaiming myth, a path to wholeness. In a world fractured by division, myth has the power to restore connection, not just to culture, but to self. Myth binds the inner and outer world. It reminds us that we are part of something larger. Our struggles are not meaningless. Our dreams are part of an ancient song. To reclaim myth is not to reject reason. It is to remember rhythm. It is to rediscover the sacred story beneath everyday life. This is not about worshiping the past. It is about recognizing that the soul never forgets the language of story, symbol, and silence. Myth is that language. It speaks even when we stop listening. But when we do listen, something awakens. We begin to see that the soul of myth is not out there in ancient temples or dusty texts. It is within us, waiting to be reawakened. Beyond the surface of life. In our modern world, life is often reduced to function. We are workers, users, consumers, data points. We wake up to to-do lists, spend hours behind screens, and fall asleep thinking of what must be done tomorrow. Our days are measured in productivity. Our worth is often mistaken for efficiency. And in all this noise, something ancient, tender, and essential goes quiet. That something is the soul. But the soul does not die, it waits. It waits beneath the surface of routine, beneath the cracks of crisis, beneath the hunger we cannot name. It waits for awakening. And when it awakens, it does so not with facts or formulas, but with symbols, stories, and sacred insight. That is why the soul of myth is not merely about tales of old. It is about a way of seeing, a way of being in the world that reclaims meaning, mystery, and the magic of existence. Life as a journey, not just a job. From childhood, we are taught to plan, perform, and produce. Life becomes a ladder to climb or a race to win. We're told to succeed, to make something of ourselves, as if our worth depends on accomplishment alone. But the soul does not experience life as a checklist. It experiences life as a journey, rich with lessons, trials, and inner growth. In mythology, the journey is the central theme. The hero leaves home, encounters danger, discovers inner strength, and returns transformed. This is not just a tale, it is a template for human experience. Think of your own life. Have you ever been called to something greater, even if you didn't understand why? Have you ever had to leave behind comfort to face uncertainty? Have you experienced moments of darkness that tested you, yet taught you something vital? These are not detours. They are the journey. They are the soul's curriculum. When we see life mythically, we recognize that every experience, even suffering, can be part of a sacred unfolding. Jobs, tasks, and roles may be part of the outer story, but the inner journey is what gives them meaning. Pain as transformation, not just punishment. Pain is inevitable. Loss, heartbreak, betrayal, illness, these touch every life. Yet in a world obsessed with comfort and speed, we are taught to escape pain, numb it, medicate it, avoid it at all costs. But the soul does not run from pain. It listens. It transforms. In myth, pain is never pointless. It is often the threshold to transformation. In Greek mythology, Demeter's grief over her daughter Persephone leads to the creation of the seasons. In Egyptian myth, Isis's mourning brings Osiris back to life. In Christian tradition, the crucifixion leads to resurrection. Pain in these stories is not a punishment from a cruel cosmos. It is the womb of rebirth. The soul awakens when we shift our view of suffering, not as something to be fixed or explained away, but as something to be entered, felt, and transformed. When you face heartbreak, you are descending into the underworld. When you confront your wounds, you are battling your shadow. When you rise again with deeper compassion or clarity, you are reborn. This is not metaphor. This is mythic truth. And it is how the soul grows. The self as a sacred character, not just a screen name. In the digital age, identity is often flattened. We become usernames, avatars, brands. Our inner life is reduced to bios, metrics, and curated images. But beneath all this, the soul longs to remember who it truly is, not a product, not a profile, but a presence in a sacred story. To live mythically is to reclaim your inner self, not as random or accidental, but as meaningful and essential. You are not a mistake. You are not a glitch in the system. You are a soul in the middle of a mythic becoming. The ancient world understood this. In indigenous traditions, names are often earned through spiritual vision or sacred trials. In Hindu cosmology, the Atman soul is seen as divine essence, connected to the eternal Brahman. In African cosmologies, the self is never alone. It is part of a lineage, a destiny, a greater web of ancestors and spirit. This mythic view invites us to ask not just, "What do I do?" but, "Who am I becoming? What role do I play in the world's unfolding? What deeper story is trying to live through me?" These questions awaken the soul, and they do so by placing the self within a sacred context. Re-enchantment, seeing with the soul's eyes. We live in a disenchanted world. The forests are no longer sacred. The sky is just weather. The body is a machine. The cosmos is silent. But myth invites us to reawaken the soul's eyes, to see the sacred again in the ordinary. A river is not just water, it is a goddess flowing. A tree is not just wood, it is a world standing. A coincidence is not random, it is a sign. This way of seeing is not superstition. It is participation. It is the awareness that we are not separate from life, but woven into its living fabric. It is a return to wonder. The soul awakens when we slow down and pay attention, not just with logic, but with reverence. The return of the archetypes. Carl Jung spoke of archetypes, universal patterns that live within the collective unconscious. These include the hero, the mentor, the shadow, the mother, the trickster, and others. When we awaken to mythic seeing, we recognize that these are not just literary devices. They are living forces within us. The hero rises when you take a courageous stand. The shadow appears when you confront your own darkness. The wise old man or woman guides you through inner wisdom or outer teachers. The trickster breaks your routine, forcing you to laugh, adapt, or let go. You are not just yourself. You are a cast of characters playing out ancient themes. To become conscious of these archetypes is to become more whole, not by denying parts of yourself, but by integrating them. The soul awakens when it no longer hides from its own complexity, but honors every part of the inner cast. Awakening through crisis. Sometimes the soul awakens not through calm, but through chaos. A crisis, whether personal or collective, can be a soul event. It shakes the foundations. It ends the old chapter. It thrusts us into uncertainty. This is mythic. In nearly every tradition, there is a moment of rupture. The flood, the exile, the dark night, the breaking of the world. But what follows is not always ruin. It is revelation. The crisis reveals what we've forgotten. It strips away illusions. It calls forth a deeper truth. And from the rubble of the old, a new self, a new path, a new myth can emerge. If you are in crisis, ask, what is being asked of me? What must I release? What part of me is dying, and what part is trying to be born? The soul does not fear crisis. It uses it. It transforms it into meaning. Living mythically, practices for the soul. How can we live mythically? Not just think about myths, but embody them. Here are practices that help awaken the soul's vision. Ritual. Create simple rituals for transition points. Lighting a candle to begin the day, writing a letter to release the past, walking mindfully to mark a decision. Ritual brings the invisible into form. Journaling as mythic memoir, Don't just write what happened. Write it as myth. What archetypes were present? What lessons emerged? What symbols showed up? Dreamwork. Your dreams are nightly myths. Record them. Reflect on their meaning. Ask what your unconscious is trying to teach. Nature as scripture. Spend time in nature not as an observer, but as a participant. Watch the clouds. Speak to the wind. See the forest as a temple. Story as soul mirror. Return to ancient myths or modern tales. Find yourself in them. What character speaks to you? What journey echoes your own? Community as sacred circle. Share your journey with others. A soul awakened in isolation longs to connect. Find or form spaces where myth, depth, and truth are welcome. The soul awakens not through information, but through initiation, through living as if your life is sacred. Because it is. The awakening is now. The soul of myth is not a theory. It is a way of seeing. It is seeing that your life is a story still being written. It is knowing that your pain is part of your transformation. It is realizing that you are not lost. You are in the middle of a mythic journey. To live mythically is not to escape reality. It is to redeem it, to find the sacred in the secular, to name the divine in the daily, to awaken the soul beneath the surface. In this world of noise and numbness, the awakening of the soul is the quiet revolution. It is the inner fire that refuses to go out. It is the whisper beneath all chaos. You are more than this. There is meaning. There is mystery. There is myth. And so, as you walk through your day, pause. Ask yourself, what story am I living? What part of me is calling to be heard? What myth is trying to awaken through my life? The soul is not far. It is listening. It is ready. Now is the time to remember. Now is the time to awaken. The myth is alive. And so are you. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the soul of myth. These stories aren't just echoes from the past. They're living voices that still speak to our deepest questions and dreams. If this exploration moved you, inspired you, or made you see myths in a new light, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more soul-stirring content. Leave a comment with the myth that speaks most to you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, remember, the soul of myth lives in you, waiting to be awakened. Keep seeking, keep wondering, and keep the story alive.